What is going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, back with yes another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a spending guide for everyone. I think with the clan I'm in, with the 5 accounts I've had, and pretty much my track record on spending money, all of the mistakes I've made in the game, I wanted to make a well-rounded guide so people had some direction if they did choose to spend on this game. You can absolutely play this game for a half an hour to an hour a day and not spend any money. Majority of people do spend a little bit of money on this game. Some people spend a decent amount and some people spend a lot of money. There are lots of mistakes you can make. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go over all of the mistakes you can make, how to prevent that, how to maximize your value in this game, whether you're a one-time spender, an infrequent spender, or someone who spends quite regularly. So let me help you get the most out of this game if you do enjoy it as a pastime and you enjoy playing it all the time. So the first thing I want to go over is early game spenders. What should you be spending money on if you are going to spend? If I had to recommend things for you to spend, I would say shards have the most value when you're first starting out in the game. You don't have a lot of options when you're first starting out, so pretty much anything you pull is a gain for your account. This obviously has a severe drop off as you progress further into the game, and this is why I recommend buying shards. I don't think energy is important early game. Since you're given a ton of energy early on, I think the same thing with gems. I don't think there's a lot of value there. Most of the time, the most efficient way to spend your gems is either on masteries for your first champion or energy. Energy is not an efficient way to spend your gems if you are early game. You get the maximum value obviously from level 60 because you get 130 energy per 40 gems that you're using. So I highly recommend waiting until you hit, I would say, at least level 55 or 50 before using gems to refill your energy and progress further. Now outside of that, one thing that I notice people constantly avoiding based on how much they cost are the gear packs. This is something I've done, and I formulated this opinion very early on. Gear packs are very good for starting players. If you look at the value of a gear pack, and I'm not saying all gear packs, I would say lifesteal gear packs. If you had to pick one thing to spend on, it would be a lifesteal 6-star or 5-star legendary gear pack for your champion. As I'm sure you guys already know by now, flat stats are terrible. However, they're actually pretty good early game, and the quality of gear you're going to get based on what the game gives you when you first start out is pretty much night and day. And this fact is true from early game all the way to end game. Gear makes your account as good as it can be. You can have every single legendary in the game. If you don't have the gear to back it up, you won't be able to do anything. I cannot tell you how many takeovers I've done where people come forward from early Nightmare Brutal and say, I would like a 2 key, I have the champions you use in your video. Now, it's okay if you have the champions, that means it is possible. However, it's not possible if you don't have the gear to back it up. A lot of people say my gear is ridiculous. Some of it's very good. However, that quality gear is what you would need to do 60 million damage, 80 million damage on the clan boss. You need that quality gear to hit those levels. So while it may seem ridiculous, the numbers I'm getting are proportionate to the gear that I have, not the champions I have. It's a very important thing to consider, and that goes directly to my point on why gear packs are important in the early game if you had to pick something to buy. Try to stay away from the level 10 reward, the level 20 reward. They may seem good, however, I value blue shards extremely high early game, and I value sacreds extremely low. Yes, it's good that you can get a guaranteed epic or legendary, however, food is also very important. Now this comes into the question of, what about chicken packs? Now, this may shock you, but I think chicken packs are very low value in the early game, and this is why. I did just do a can you use your starters in an endgame scenario video. So you can use your starters in an endgame scenario. However, if you look at the rewards from campaign, from brutal, hard, and normal, you get a lot of shards for free just from progressing through the rewards. Now, if you buy a chicken pack and 6-star your starter instantly, if you pull a champion that's a more efficient starter, pretty much better for you everywhere else in the game. If you get lucky, get a legendary that can do everything your starter did, you just wasted money on fully maxing your starter, and now you have this awesome champion you cannot touch without farming the food regularly. So this is something to heavily consider, and I pretty much highlighted this in the Affinity Cup, where I used the starter Relic Keeper. I did not mastery him, and I did not use any skills on him. I went as far as I could go in the campaign, saying I'm going to get more shards through the campaign and through the competition. You can do a lot with just one pack in the early game scenario to make this game a lot more fun, and you don't have to spend a ton of money to do it. So that's what I would recommend. And before I get to mid game, one thing I want to talk about that I can't stress enough: do not buy the raid card unless you're frequently spending money. This is, I think, the biggest misconception in players, where they think, what is $10 a month? It doesn't matter. I'm getting extra silver and I'm getting extra experience. To get the most value out of the raid card, you have to be constantly leveling up food, gaining that bonus from the extra experience. The experience boost that you get from the game itself is 100%. From the raid card, it's 20% plus the 20% silver you gain is not worth $10 a month. If you had a budget of $10 a month and you were using it all on the raid card, you could use your budget of 5 months of the raid card, use it on a pack, and you would instantly get more value there. Because if you're only using the daily energy you get, you are not going to get the value out of that $10 that you think you are, even though it is so cheap. So if you are currently on a subscription for the raid card and you're not farming at least 260s in the duration of that raid card each week, I highly recommend you cancel that subscription now and save your money. Now, the next topic is a little bit questionable because we only had one of them so far, and this is the Battle Pass. In my opinion, you should not be spending money on the Battle Pass, even though it is a good value. The big draw to the Battle Pass is, I want it now. That is the #1 market for Plarium. They do a fantastic job. Look how successful the game is. So the Battle Pass has I want it now written all over it. People who don't want to wait for the chance of getting that instant legendary, regardless of how good it is. Every player wants a legendary. It's not possible to buy a legendary, and now this Battle Pass comes out. That is the best thing you can do. Hang in front of a player to make them buy something. Now, there are extreme benefits to the Battle Pass. The experience in the Battle Pass is actually worth it if you do plan on buying it. However, if you are not spending money on energy, like I said before, the Battle Pass will not be worth it to you. The most financially sound way to approach the Battle Pass is to go as far as you can while you're free to play. And if you are not spending money on energy refills, it's the same thing with the raid card. You are not getting the most value out of it. You don't have to spend as much energy to get the value out of it. However, the Battle Pass is significantly more expensive than a raid card, so this is also something to consider when going forward. Now, if you're a mid-sized spender, I would say 100% get the Battle Pass. If you're a heavy spender, definitely get the Battle Pass. If you're looking for just a one-time boost and you don't spend a lot, I think you should definitely think twice. Really calculate the value you're going to get. Go over all of the rewards. Like I said, we've only had one Battle Pass. Those rewards were pretty good. However, no one knows what's going to be in the second Battle Pass. So instead of just instantly buying it, going off of the reviews of the first one, having such good rewards, definitely do yourself a favor and either wait for someone to review it. I'm definitely going to be reviewing it when it comes out. Make sure everything in that Battle Pass is worth the value to you if you are going to spend your money on this game in getting that Battle Pass. Now, the next thing I want to go over are mid-game players. What should you be spending your money on? This is where things change a little bit. You're pretty much never going to look at a gear pack when you're in the mid-game, and in my opinion, you should never look at a shard pack. It's just suboptimal. You already passed your entry-level early game where shards had very high value. Now it's extremely low value. Maybe you got unlucky and what you spent so far, the shards you got so far, it didn't prove valuable. However, usually by mid-game, you have a solid team of 5-6 champions that you're willing to work with. If you don't, that's when you consider buying shards, but you have to make sure that based on the shard rates, what it takes to get a champion, that any pack you pull, you will always get something worth it to you. And you can say, how would you know, since everything's random in RNG, if you would get something worth it? Make it so if you're going to buy a shard pack in the mid game, that there's hundreds of epics you can get that will improve your gameplay. There's always that small percent chance that you get a champion you already have, and look at it as a food investment outside of that. If you're going to buy a shard pack in the early game, you have to need food and you have to have a high chance of getting a champion that you can actually use going forward. Outside of that, while it's different from the early game, I think this is where you're going to be focused on only looking at gems and energy for the mid game, and this is where you can start looking into books. However, I don't think books are a huge part of the mid game gameplay. So usually when you're in the mid game, you're pretty much in your prime of progressing through all the dungeons and looking to get those dungeons on farm so you can unlock your arbiter. This is where energy plays a huge role. You need lots of gear to make it through all of these dungeons. You also need a pretty decent roster of champions to be able to swap in and out. So I think there's a big focus on gems and energy there. Also, this is where you're going to be taking your champions through the Minotaur runs. Now, I do not recommend that anybody buys masteries outside of their first champion. I think it's okay to spend gems on masteries on your first champion that you're going to use for a farmer hybrid. You're also going to use that farmer for clan boss. I think that's perfectly okay to get maximum value. However, after that first champion, it's actually a waste in gems to not farm Minotaur yourself. I actually have a guide on that where you can bring your unleveled champions that you want masteries on, so you're leveling them up and getting scrolls for them in your Minotaur run. So there's lots of efficient ways to run a Minotaur, and I think that's the best value out of the energy you're going to spend and the best value to use your gems going forward. Now, if you are currently buying the raid card, like I said, I highly recommend you start buying this instead. This is probably one of the best values in the game. Outside of the early game, like I mentioned, you don't really need gems in the early game, but mid game and on, if you're willing to spend $10 a month, this daily gem pack that's constantly refreshing would definitely be the best value for you as far as spending money. Now, this also goes to the problem with the battle pass where this is what you're going to get, but I want it now. So this does slowly release all of the gems to you. So you're going to be looking to either using this on energy as it goes for an extra refill, or you're going to be saving this up for your initial mastery use on your champion to fully max them out. Outside of that, definitely never use gems to get blue shards. That's the biggest waste. Even if you're going for a champion, you're pretty much just going to be met with disappointment. So don't just randomly spend 900 shards on 11 ancient shards and some silver, because I've personally found that if you're looking for a champion out of shards, you're only going to be met with disappointment. If you're pulling shards as they come up and say, I would love something, but I'm not really focused on getting anything right now, that's the best way for your mental to pull shards and not be upset afterwards. So that's what I recommend for the mid game. Now going on to the end game. If you are a low spender in the end game, what should you be focused on buying? Now, I do have the endgame split in two, so I'm going to call one version endgame, where you just got level 20 dungeons done, you're moving on to Ultra Nightmare, and then I'm going to call the next one the endgame. I know that's going to sound confusing, but the endgame is pretty much where I'm at. Not a lot of players are currently there in the game so far, so I definitely have to distinguish it. Since I personally categorize endgame as such a wide tier, I decided it would be better to split it in two for this video, and I pretty much split it in two for everywhere else. So if you're endgame, what you should really be focusing on is pretty much the same as mid-game. Gems and energy just to further farm all of your dungeons, get the gear you need. You're not going to be looking at shards because the value by this point has skyrocketed all the way to the bottom, and there's literally no point for you pulling shards. It's just going to be met with disappointment. I know it, you know it, so that pretty much ends the conversation there. The only new thing on the list from mid-game that you should start to consider purchasing if you are going to spend money are legendary books. Legendary books are way too hard to get in this game. They should definitely add a better way, but I would be looking at all of the offers that are popping up, and if you do plan on spending any money, definitely look for legendary books and epic books. I think this company should definitely add more ways for us to get it through the game without spending money, but until they do that, this is something that's high on the list for an endgame player to be looking for going forward. Now talking about the endgame players, this is the final bracket you can get to. This is where I consider myself in the game. You have all the level 20 dungeons done. You can get to platinum from gold at any point you want without a struggle. You can 3-key, 2-key, or 1-key Ultra Nightmare. What do you spend your money on the most efficiently? So kind of like the other stages, this is also where now gems and energy have a diminished return. Once you get to the end game, as I call it, it's very hard to get a piece of gear that's an upgrade. I personally have stopped farming all dungeons because for me, I've noticed that it takes about 20 to 30,000 energy for me to get any upgrade unless I get extremely lucky. That is way too much energy to be spending just to get 1 or 2 upgrades, so I have stopped farming dungeons completely. This is actually where shards become valuable to you. However, it's not what you would think. So I have lots of legendaries just going through. I have most of the factions finished for the legendaries that I need. So now what I do is I collect shards and try to fill in any of the gaps that I have, but I don't look at 2 times events. I know a lot of people say never pull in 10 times, always pull in 2 times. If you're in this category that I have of the end game, personally, I would focus on 10 times events. I've only been pulling in 10 times and I've gotten more new legendaries than the past, I want to say 5 or 6 2 times events, just because I'm focusing on those specific champions that I don't have already. Yes, shards are devalued. However, if you do want to buy shards, you also have to open them in the proper time, like I'm saying now. So contrary to being endgame, if you are in this stage of the endgame, as I call it, also legendary books and epic books actually devalue for you. You're at this point, you can pretty much clear all content unless you're just looking to have fun and you're comfortable with spending enough money to keep testing out new champions. There's no reason to buy any books since you can already clear all of the content with the champions you already have. Now this is probably going to be the controversial point that I'm going to make today. One thing that's worth it, that I've said this from the start if you are in the end game, and I kind of touched on it with my philosophy on I'm not farming dungeons anymore because it's so hard to get gear. Now is when I buy all of the gear packs for items that I need. Any 6-star gear pack that comes out for speed, I'm buying all of them. I've already done the math on how long it takes for me to get 6-star speed gear and how much energy it takes, and it's actually worth it for me to buy the gear packs instead of buying energy and gems and converting that into dragon runs. Yes, I can get lucky on my dragon runs and get 2 upgrades and 100 energy, but I can also get lucky on buying 1 pack and getting 3 upgrades from that pack alone. So while this entire video is going to be subjective to what I personally believe, this point, obviously there's RNG involved, so take everything with a grain of salt. Use this as, I guess, a model for how to go forward. But obviously, opinions can vary from player to player. Most of this information has been gathered from myself and from my entire clan of 120 people. What's going to be shocking for a lot of people to hear, we do have quite a few free-to-play players in Gods and Legends. And I know a lot of people think everyone in Gods and Legends is a whale. Most of it is people who don't spend that often, but when they do, they're extremely efficient with it. So we have a Discord channel that's strictly related to offers. Every time an offer comes out that raises interest, we pretty much discuss it, the pros, the cons. We do have all of the calculators that a lot of people use, but we don't really use that. We look at it as a reference, and then we determine what the value is to us. And I think this is the final point of the video and something everyone should consider. If the value is really good, but you don't necessarily need the items in the pack, the value goes extremely lower. So every single pack should be looked at in relation to you as the player, not based on what a calculator says. If an amazing shard pack comes out that's 4 times the value, but shards are actually a waste for you to buy. There's no reason for you to buy it just because it's a good value. This is another awesome tactic that Plarium has to get people to spend money based on these calculators because they know we have them. Definitely consider that if you are falling victim to using a calculator to determine if any purchase is worth it. Just because it's worth it doesn't mean you need that pack to help you in the progression of your account. Alright guys, let me know what you guys thought of that video. This is definitely going to be, I don't want to say controversial, but definitely an out there video. I want to get your feedback. What do you think of what I'm saying and how I've been playing this game for the past year and how I've been pretty much managing how I spend, how our clan spends. If you are someone that spends money, what do you do to get the most value out of this game? This is what I really want to know in the comments below. So definitely drop a comment if any of this applies to you and what you think on this matter. As always, if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. And that's it for me today. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.